London, 1887. The fog rolls like a living thing, thick and watchful, swallowing sound and light. Somewhere in Belgravia, behind lace curtains and candlelit windows, a scream is cut short. And then laughter. A woman's laughter. Bright, hollow.
Wrong.
It echoes through the night like a nursery rhyme twisted by madness. Hours later, when the police arrive, they find her body cold. But her lips are still curved in a smile. The papers called him the laughing man. The people called him the devil in a gentleman's coat. But that title hides something deeper, because this wasn't a man who killed for pleasure. He killed for purpose, precision, symbolism. Each crime was a ritual, and each victim was chosen, not for who they were, but for what they represented. The Victorians loved to believe they were civilized, that gaslight and etiquette had tamed the beast, but beneath the polished boots and powdered faces lay a city rotting from the inside. Secret clubs, blackmail rings, aristocrats trading souls for status. And in the middle of it all, one killer who mocked their illusion of control. He didn't just take lives, he exposed lies. His murders weren't random, they were messages, written in blood for those who understood the code. The laughter, always heard hours after death, wasn't his. It was recorded, engineered, a mechanical device hidden in the victim's room, triggered long after the killing was done. You see, the real horror wasn't in what he did with his hands. It was in what he knew, because this killer, whoever he was, had knowledge that belonged only to the highest reaches of London's power structure. He understood police response times, medical inconsistencies, and how to manipulate the narrative before the press ever touched it. The laughing man was not one of them. He was above them, or perhaps beneath them. And if you listen closely to the echo of that laughter, through the archives, the journals, the censored testimonies, you begin to hear something else behind it. A message, one the crown buried, one that still whispers through the centuries, reminding us of a truth no empire wants you to know, that the ones who claim to protect you are often the ones orchestrating the nightmare. The investigation began like every other. Inspectors, journalists, and the scent of brandy and death mingling in the parlor. But there was something off about this case from the start. The scene was too perfect, too symbolic. A single rose placed in the victim's mouth, a mirror shattered, but only across the eyes, and etched faintly into the wood of the mantelpiece, visible only under lamplight. The Latin phrase, redendo castigat mundum. He corrects the world by laughing at it. Inspector Harwick tried to dismiss it as the work of a deranged individual. But quietly, behind closed doors, Scotland Yard received a visit, not from the Crown, but from a man claiming to represent the Society for the Preservation of English Virtue. It was an organization that didn't exist on paper, but everyone knew it did. The same men who funded hospitals, built railways, and owned newspapers. The same men who held séances in their basements and called it philanthropy. Within days, the case file began to shrink. Witness statements went missing, autopsy notes rewritten, and every mention of the laughing device, gone, erased as if it never existed. The public was told the suspect was a madman, most likely foreign. The press printed it in bold. London slept again. But Harwick didn't. He kept one thing hidden. The original wax cylinder recording found at the crime scene. It played the laughter, a sound so strange it seemed human and mechanical at once. But layered beneath it, when slowed down, were whispers. Indecipherable at first. Then, one phrase became clear. You were warned. What Harwick didn't know was that this was not the first time the message had appeared. A century earlier, during the Great Fire of London, the same Latin phrase was found carved into a charred beam near St. Paul's, redendo castigat mundum. The same hand, the same mocking tone, echoing through time. The laughing man wasn't merely a killer. He was a symbol. A messenger repeating a forgotten warning. His laughter was the sound of truth breaking through the mask of empire. And yet, even now, the laughter continues to surface. Not in alleyways, but in corridors of power, in the media's polished smiles, in every truth wrapped in mockery and denial. Laughter, the most innocent of sounds, the thing that binds humans together. But in the late Victorian age, it became something far more sinister. To the secret societies that ruled London from behind the curtains, laughter was a form of dominance, a signal of superiority, a code of mockery used to degrade, confuse, and control. They believed that whoever could make a man laugh at his own suffering owned him. This philosophy wasn't born in England. It came from ancient Romea, from the rituals of Saturnalia, when slaves and masters would trade roles for a day. The laughter then wasn't joy. It was humiliation disguised as humor. The same ritual resurfaced centuries later, hidden inside secret Masonic rites, aristocratic masquerades, and private performances known only as the gilded revels. The elite would gather in candlelit chambers, wearing masks of porcelain smiles, and reenact crimes disguised as theater. Every mock execution, every cruel jest, was justified as moral satire. It was during one of these events that the laughing man was first whispered about, not as a killer, but as a figure of myth. A jester who punished the wicked by turning their own masks against them. Some said he was a former performer at these secret gatherings, a servant who'd seen too much. Others claimed he was a composite myth, invented by those who wanted to expose the rot in the empire's core. But the truth is darker. When Inspector Harwick traced the wax cylinder's manufacturer, he found it was produced not for entertainment, but for psychological study. The order came from the Royal Society of Behavioral Inquiry, a government-funded laboratory experimenting with sound, fear, and obedience. They were studying how laughter could trigger trust, even in moments of terror. A tool of control disguised as amusement. Now imagine the irony. A killer using their own device against them, using the empire's laughter to destroy the illusion of its morality. Because what the Victorians didn't understand was this mockery is power. Every empire falls the moment its people stop fearing and start laughing at it. The laughing man weaponized that realization. His crimes weren't just murder. They were rebellion, wrapped in the sound the powerful thought they controlled. The experiments began quietly, in 1885 inside an abandoned hospital near Clerkenwell. Officially, it was a research facility for acoustic studies. Unofficially, it was a chamber of human experimentation funded by men whose names never appeared in Parliament. Inside its cold brick walls, the Royal Society of Behavioral Inquiry conducted what they called the resonance trials. Their theory was chillingly simple. Sound could shape obedience. Tone could bypass logic. And laughter, the right kind of laughter, could rewire the mind. Test subjects were often the forgotten. Orphans, prostitutes, and the mentally ill, drawn in with promises of food and shelter. They were locked in padded rooms and exposed to cycles of sound. Mocking laughter, shrill bursts of amusement layered with whispered commands. Some would laugh uncontrollably. Others screamed until their voices broke. After hours of exposure, something inside them shifted. They became compliant, silent, their will dissolved. The lead scientist, Dr. Aldous Whitfield, wrote in his private notes, "Laughter appears to induce a hypnotic state. The subject accepts ridicule as reward. Pain becomes pleasure. Resistance fades." When the laughing man struck his first victim, Lady Evelyn Whitfield, he didn't just kill the doctor's wife, he made her his message. The laughter heard after her death came from one of the very recordings used in those experiments. The killer knew. He wanted the public to hear what the elite had created. Harwick later discovered that several victims were connected to those trials. Investors, scientists, even one government minister. Each one had signed off on the program. Each one died smiling. And yet, rather than reveal the truth, the authorities silenced it. They burned the reports, shut down the lab, declared the killer, a foreign madman. But the pattern didn't stop. It evolved. Newspapers began using laughter as propaganda. Satirical cartoons mocked dissenters. Performers were paid to ridicule reformists. Even the church joined in, preaching that laughter was proof of divine joy, not manipulation. You see, they turned a weapon into a culture, a form of invisible control. The laughing man tried to expose it with blood, but instead, his story was twisted into entertainment. Another tale to make the masses chuckle and forget. The deeper Inspector Harwick dug, the more the laughter turned from sound to signal. A calling card left not by one man, but by a network, hidden within the financial ledgers of the Royal Society. He found a recurring symbol, a coiled serpent biting its own tail. The Ouroboros, the mark of an inner circle calling itself the Echelon. A secret fraternity older than the crown itself, spanning politicians, bankers, bishops, and scholars. Their mission, written in cipher, was to perfect the human spirit through controlled ridicule. They believed humiliation was purification, break the ego, mold the mind. It was the same logic used by inquisitors, cults, and ancient mystery schools. Only now it wore the mask of science and progress. The Echelon poured money into hospitals, universities, and newspapers, not to heal or educate, but to shape thought. Every publication they touched had one hidden directive: normalize mockery, sterilize outrage, turn rebellion into performance. Harwick traced one major investor, Lord Charles Pembroke, whose family's wealth came from colonial exploitation. His Belgravia mansion was the last place the eerie laughter was heard before Mrs. Whitfield's death. In his study, Harwick found theater masks carved from ivory, one smiling, one weeping. Behind them, a drawer filled with transcripts labeled audience response studies. It contained logs of psychological reactions to laughter broadcast during public trials and executions. And then came the chilling realization. The Echelon wasn't studying entertainment. They were training obedience. The laughter of the crowd, that roaring wave of amusement, wasn't spontaneous. It was engineered, cued by orchestrated signals from hidden devices placed in the audience halls. The people thought they were laughing freely. They weren't. They were being conditioned. That conditioning never stopped. From the drawing rooms of Victorian London, it spread into radio broadcasts, vaudeville, and later, the earliest films. The same formula: ridicule the truth teller, glorify the fool, laugh at the pain, and the masses will obey. And somewhere in the dark, the laughing man saw what the world refused to see. That the Empire's greatest weapon wasn't the sword, or the gallows. It was mockery, the sound of chains disguised as laughter. By the turn of the century, the Echelon had learned something empires before them had only dreamed of: control the emotions, and you control the mind. They realized fear alone breeds rebellion. But ridicule kills rebellion before it's born. Laughter became the Empire's soft weapon, its velvet whip. When the masses mock what should terrify them, power wins without firing a shot. By 1901, the Echelon's members had quietly merged their influence into publishing houses, theater companies, and news agencies. When motion pictures arrived, they saw opportunity, not for art, but for programming. They funded comedies that mocked the poor, feminized strength, and ridiculed moral conviction. They understood something few men do: that humor can erode conviction faster than violence ever could. In the archives Harwick uncovered after the case was closed, a chilling memorandum surfaced, stamped classified Echelon 14. It outlined a long-term plan called the Mirror Protocol. The idea was diabolically elegant: turn every truth into a joke before it's believed. If the population laughs at the messenger, they'll never hear the message. If they laugh at the warning, they'll never prepare for what's coming. And that's exactly what happened. The empire collapsed, but its ghost survived in the new age of media. The same symbols reappeared: the serpent, the smile, the whisper of laughter behind the curtain. From vaudeville to the radio laugh track, The same technique evolved. Programming through ridicule, every forced chuckle, every fake applause track, every satirical headline, all descendants of the same ritual that began in a hidden Victorian laboratory. The laughter wasn't for you. It was on you. The laughing man's murders were his rebellion against it. His victims weren't random. They were architects of that psychological cage. His laughter machine wasn't a gimmick. It was his weapon, his mirror, his vengeance. He forced society to face the sound they'd chosen to ignore. And now, more than a century later, that same laughter surrounds you every day. It fills your screens, your feeds, your conversations. It numbs you to corruption. It entertains you into submission. But here's the moment, the test. If you've made it this far, comment this twice below to lock it in. The laughter is the signal. The laughter is the signal. Because once you see that truth, you start being the audience and start becoming the awakener. The mirror protocol didn't die with the empire. It adapted as the 20th century dawned. Its disciples realized the future of control wasn't in parliaments or pulpits. It was in broadcasts. The first global medium, radio, became their new cathedral. It didn't just transmit sound. It transmitted mood, rhythm, and suggestion. A laugh at the right frequency could pacify millions. A jeer could delegitimize anyone who threatened the system. The very first British Broadcasting Corporation chairman, Lord Reith, was rumored to have been mentored by a member of the echelon. Under his guidance, early programming followed a coded structure: humor, ridicule, obedience. Political satire shows emerged, mocking dissent under the illusion of free expression. But beneath the laughter was a deeper purpose: desensitization. When corruption is funny, no one fights it. When war becomes parody, no one resists it. The mirror protocol spread overseas. Hollywood became its temple, the studio system its altar. Behind the glitter and champagne were quiet partnerships. Government agencies funding scripts, intelligence officers advising writers, all under the noble banner of morale building. What they were really building was psychological immunity to truth. By mid-century, the laugh track had arrived. Mechanical laughter injected into every living room, a hypnotic cue teaching the masses when to find something funny, when to relax, when to stop thinking. It was control disguised as comfort, and while the people laughed, the architects of control restructured the world. Banks consolidated. Media conglomerates merged. Governments learned that ridicule was safer than censorship, cheaper than bullets. Mockery became the leash. And by the time television matured, the pattern was complete. Every threat to the system was branded crazy, conspiratorial, or a joke. The programming was total, but the strangest part, the same phrase, ridendo castigat mundum, still appeared hidden in the margins of internal communications between broadcasting executives as late as 1956. The serpent had changed its skin, not its nature. So when people laughed at the idea of the laughing man as nothing but a legend, the irony was complete. They were mocking the very warning he died to deliver, because the real killer wasn't a man in London's fog. It was the system he tried to expose. The one that still whispers behind your screen today. By the dawn of the digital age, the mirror protocol had evolved into something far more powerful, something invisible. Where laughter once echoed through theaters and radios, it now traveled through screens and scrolls. The system no longer needed actors or devices to control the rhythm of emotion. It had algorithms. Digital code became the new hypnotist, studying your pulse through every swipe, every chuckle emoji, every second of watch time. The old elites of the echelon had long since shed their titles, but their descendants, the media executives, the behavioral scientists, the intelligence strategists, carried on the creed. Their belief remained unchanged. Ridicule the awakening before it spreads. The new battlefield wasn't the streets of London. It was your own attention, and the new laughter was viral, Memes replaced sermons. Satire replaced rebellion. The algorithm learned that outrage and mockery produced the same chemical rush as pleasure. It rewarded derision, punished silence. In time, the system didn't need to suppress dissent. It taught people to mock themselves, to laugh at truth before they could feel its weight. But this evolution wasn't random. Declassified documents from psychological warfare programs in the 1960s revealed the blueprint: Operation Mirrorwave. Its goal: to weaponize irony and humor as tools of demoralization. From late-night monologues to social media trends, the same pattern emerges. Truth stripped of power through a smirk. Corruption disguised as comedy. The same laughter that once echoed from mechanical cylinders in London parlors now hums beneath your fingertips, crafted not by jesters but by machines that know you better than you know yourself. Every joke you share, every meme you repost, data, behavior, conditioning. And just as the laughing man once forced London to hear its own madness through his victims' final smiles, today the system forces you to perform your own enslavement. Willingly, proudly, unknowingly. But there's a fracture forming. The same one Harwick felt when he first slowed down that wax recording and heard the whisper beneath the laughter. You were warned. Because this isn't entertainment anymore. It's an initiation. You're hearing what you were never meant to hear. And if your instincts are awake, you already feel it. That pulse of awareness that can't be silenced. The algorithm was never designed to entertain you. That's the illusion. The warm glow, the dopamine drip, the endless scroll. In truth, it's the perfected form of the mirror protocol, refined over a century of psychological engineering. The laughter is still there. Only now it hides behind filters, emojis, and sarcasm. A digital smirk, a chorus of mockery disguised as humor. The machine has learned to weaponize irony itself. In the 1880s, the echelon needed scientists, journalists, and secret lodges to shape mass perception. In the 21st century, it needs only you. Every post you react to, every video you share, becomes a node in the network. A self-replicating army of unknowing jesters. The system doesn't suppress the truth anymore. It drowns it in jokes. It buries revelation beneath ridicule, so even the seekers begin to laugh at their own awakening. The architecture of control is psychological, not political. Power doesn't need to hide behind thrones. It hides behind laughter. It teaches you that seriousness is weakness, that everything sacred should be mocked. And so, the modern man, stripped of reverence, detached from purpose, becomes docile, entertained, numb. A digital subject who mistakes amusement for awareness. The architects knew this would happen. In leaked internal memos from major tech conglomerates, analysts describe humor indexing, the measurement of emotional volatility through the speed and tone of user reactions. They've built an invisible economy of attention, where your laughter is the currency. Every cynical chuckle, every ironic meme, every laugh, cry emoji feeds the same machine, a data leviathan that studies human emotion with the precision of a surgeon and the detachment of a god. The laughing man warned us, not with prophecy, but with proof. His crimes were allegory made flesh. He forced the empire to look into its own reflection, to hear the sound of its own mockery. And that same echo now lives in your feed, amplified, digitized, eternal. Because the truth is this: you are living inside the perfected machine of ridicule, a civilization programmed to laugh at its own collapse. But there's a reason you're still here, still listening. Something inside you knows the laughter isn't joy. It's the sound of hypnosis. Long before the gaslit streets of London, before the echelon, before even the crowns and crosses of empire, the ritual of mockery was already ancient. It began in temples, not theaters, in mystery cults that ruled with silence and symbols. The priests of the old world understood something terrifying about the human mind. Shame controls deeper than fear. And laughter is simply shame reversed. In the forgotten rites of Egypt, initiates were made to wear masks of fools during sacred ceremonies. They would dance, stumble, and be ridiculed by the priests before being allowed into the inner sanctum. The ritual wasn't cruelty. It was programming. The humiliation stripped them of ego, rewired their identity, made them obedient to the higher order. The Greeks perfected this process in their commedia sacra, sacred comedies that mocked gods and men alike, transforming reverence into entertainment. Every joke was a spell, every laugh a binding. Centuries later, the Roman elite turned the same ritual into political strategy. Public spectacles and gladiatorial games didn't just distract. They humiliated the spirit of resistance. Mocking death turned the masses into willing witnesses of their own enslavement. The empire ruled not by force alone, but through collective laughter. It was the same laughter that the echelon resurrected centuries later under the guise of enlightenment, science, and civility. But the thread connecting them all was older still, the archetype of the laughing god. From Loki to Dionysus, from Set to the trickster spirits of the Celts. Every culture recorded a divine figure of chaos who mocked creation, inverted truth, and revealed order's hypocrisy. These were not mere myths. They were psychological blueprints. The ruling castes worshipped the trickster because he symbolized control through confusion. The laughter of the trickster wasn't freedom. It was domination through absurdity. That's what the laughing man understood. He saw how ancient this pattern truly was. That humanity had been conditioned for millennia to associate laughter with liberation, when in truth, it was a ritual of submission. His crimes were an echo of the oldest rite, forcing the corrupt to laugh at themselves before judgment. And that's why his story was buried. Because if men understood that laughter could enslave, they would also realize it could liberate. When the ancient temples fell, their rituals didn't vanish. They migrated. The actors replaced the priests, and the stage became the new altar. The ritual of mockery evolved into the performance, from medieval jesters who mocked kings to Victorian performers who mocked peasants. The same current flowed in version as control. The fool wasn't rebellion, he was permission. His laughter allowed truth to be spoken without consequence, rebellion to be expressed without action. By the 18th century, Europe's ruling classes had mastered this alchemy. They transformed sacred theater into social programming. The stage wasn't there to awaken minds. It was there to vent them. The poor could laugh at the powerful once a week, so they wouldn't revolt for the rest of the year. The jester became a pressure valve for empire, and when that wasn't enough, the empire industrialized mockery. The printing press, the pamphlet, the cartoon. Each generation, the ritual grew subtler, more sophisticated, until laughter became not a choice, but a reflex. By the time the laughing man appeared in London, this system was complete. Society had been taught to laugh at everything serious, faith, honor, virtue, even death itself. That's why his crimes struck so deep. They were a mirror to a world that had forgotten reverence. He turned their favorite symbol, laughter, into a weapon of truth. His mechanical device didn't just mock his victims, it mocked the civilization that birthed them. But look around you now. The stage has become infinite. Every phone, every screen, every feed is a theater of distraction. The jesters are countless, and their laughter is automated. You're no longer an audience member watching the ritual. You are part of it. The digital world has transformed every man into performer and observer simultaneously. You scroll, you smirk, you react, unaware that the ritual continues, rewritten in pixels and code. The purpose remains unchanged: pacify awareness through amusement. Replace revelation with reaction. Mock meaning until nothing feels sacred. And yet, some of you are beginning to sense it. That unease behind the endless humor. That hollowness inside the collective grin. You're feeling what Harwick felt in that candlelit room, listening to the laughter echo after death. The realization that not every smile is human. The transition from performance to propaganda wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated. During the First and Second World Wars, the ritual of laughter was formally absorbed into statecraft. What began as harmless comedy became psychological warfare. Governments realized that humor could manipulate emotion more effectively than fear. A man terrified will resist, a man amused will obey. In 1917, Britain's War Propaganda Bureau issued internal memos about strategic satire, a method to ridicule the enemy instead of demonizing him. The results were immediate. Soldiers laughed at their opponents instead of fearing them. Civilians mocked the war itself, dulling their own despair. The same energy that once fueled revolt now burned as irony. By the time America entered the Second World War, Hollywood had perfected the formula. Cartoons mocked the Axis, sitcoms ridiculed austerity. The laughter became the anesthetic of an entire civilization, bleeding beneath its own illusions. But behind the smiling posters and cheerful broadcasts were men in gray rooms studying the mechanics of mass amusement. The Office of Strategic Services, precursor to the CIA, conducted classified studies on behavioral fatigue through humor exposure. The finding: repeated laughter during propaganda lowered emotional resistance and increased suggestibility. The empire didn't need to censor, it could seduce. After the war, those same psychological architects joined advertising firms and media networks. They rebranded manipulation as marketing. They replaced military slogans with jingles, replaced patriotic films with situation comedies. The enemy changed from foreign powers to your own awareness. The goal was no longer to inspire, it was to distract. And through it all, the same sigil appeared quietly on the inner documents of broadcast networks. The serpent eating its own tail, the Ouroboros, the echelon's eternal mark. The architects of Victorian psychological control had merely updated their tools. By the late 1950s, laughter had become a reflex, engineered by invisible cues. A frequency of control transmitted through radios, televisions, and theaters, and no one questioned it. They believed the world had grown lighter, freer, happier. But underneath the joy was silence, because when the crowd laughs at everything, nothing is left sacred, and that's the moment when power no longer needs chains, only applause. After the war, the empire of mockery changed form, but not function. The battleground moved from nations to minds. The architects of control, psychologists, financiers, propagandists, realized they could build a prison without walls if they learned how to engineer perception. That was the true birth of the modern world, a civilization hypnotized by its own reflection. In 1948, the Tavistock Institute in London, publicly labeled a social science research center, became the nerve center of the new psychological order, funded by banking families and intelligence agencies. Its mission was simple: to study how culture could be used to guide, pacify, and reprogram the masses. They learned that laughter and irony were perfect tools. Emotion without action, rebellion without risk. A man who mocks his oppressor feels powerful, but changes nothing. From there, the pattern spread like contagion. American universities absorbed Tavistock's theories under new names: behavioral science, mass communications, advertising psychology. They discovered that ridicule, when repeated through entertainment, could dissolve belief faster than censorship ever could. Faith, patriotism, masculinity, identity, all became punchlines, slowly stripped of dignity and replaced with irony. Every generation laughed more, believed less, and obeyed better. At the same time, the financiers of this new psychological empire, the descendants of the echelon, expanded their reach. The same banks funding social studies also owned record labels, news networks, and film studios. They weren't selling products, they were selling states of mind. And the most profitable emotion was laughter, because laughter disarms. When you laugh, your body opens, your mind softens, suggestion flows freely. They didn't need to frighten you anymore. They needed to amuse you. Meanwhile, the laughing man's legend was rewritten, stripped of meaning, turned into a novelty in penny dreadfuls and stage plays. The killer who once mocked empire became a caricature of evil. The real message, that society was being conditioned through ridicule, was buried beneath his myth. But the echo remained. Those who studied the old case, those who found Harwick's lost notes, noticed the same phrase resurfacing in academic journals, broadcast documents, and think tank reports. Laughter is the opiate of order. And order, once again, was laughing. By the end of the 20th century, the experiment was complete. The laughter that once echoed through smoky London parlors now pulsed through satellites and glowing screens. The masses no longer needed to be ruled. They were entertained into obedience. The mechanism of empire had evolved from blood and conquest to dopamine and distraction. The tyrant had become the comedian. Corporations learned quickly what the echelon had always known: if you can make a man laugh at what imprisons him, he will guard the cage himself. Every brand, every film, every political message learned to package manipulation inside irony. Tragedy became trending content, outrage became punchline, even rebellion was monetized, sold back to the people as ag humor. You were told you were free because you could mock your masters, while algorithms quietly ensured your mockery never left the screen. Behind the scenes, the same elite networks that once gathered in shadowed lodges had reassembled, not as secret societies, but as media conglomerates. They owned the platforms, the news, the entertainment, the advertising. They didn't suppress dissent. They sponsored it, exaggerated it, turned it into another market. Every emotion you felt became measurable. Every joke became data. Every laugh became proof that the system was working exactly as intended. And yet, a fracture appeared, a growing unease among men who sensed something hollow beneath the humor. They saw the irony weaponized against them, their beliefs mocked, their masculinity diluted, their instincts ridiculed. The same ritual of humiliation that began in ancient temples had returned, wrapped in pixels and applause. The empire had perfected inversion of weakness sold as wisdom, chaos branded as freedom, and laughter marketed as truth. And so humanity entered the final stage of control, the age of voluntary submission. People stopped fearing authority because they couldn't take it seriously. Mockery had become the new morality, but those who remembered the story of the laughing man understood the pattern. His warning wasn't about murder. It was about mirrors. He forced his victims to face the laughter that controlled them. His crimes were not insanity, they were prophecy, and the prophecy is unfolding now, in every meme, every trend, every empty laugh that hides discomfort. You've reached the end of the descent. And now, it's time to face what few dare to know. The laughing man was never a murderer in the way the records claimed. The victims, yes, were real. But the pattern, the message, the aftermath, all point to something far darker and far more deliberate. The killings were symbols, warnings carved into flesh for those who understood codes of power. Each victim was tied to a system, a banker, a judge, a socialite, a priest. Every one of them a piece of the same hidden network that ruled Victorian London from behind polished doors. When Inspector Harwick traced the evidence, he found letters, sealed with the same insignia, later connected to early intelligence circles, the embryonic form of what became global surveillance states. Those letters referenced a project known only as Operatio Rhesus Dei, the Laughter of God. It described a ritual experiment meant to test psychological thresholds of fear and control. The laughing man, it seemed, was either its weapon or its warning. A man driven mad by witnessing the machinery of manipulation from within, a man who used mockery as rebellion. But his true message, encoded in his words before each murder, "They will laugh and never see," was a prophecy of the future we now inhabit. A world where truth is disguised as entertainment, where the scream has been replaced by a smirk, where those in power need not kill the body. They kill meaning itself. And now, you see it. Every system built to control thought, media, politics, religion, technology, learned the same lesson he tried to expose. Control is not enforced by fear, but by distraction. The sound of laughter is louder than the cry for freedom. You've been shown the mask, and beneath it, the architect's grin. But you still have a choice. Either step back into comfort, laugh it all away, and forget what you've heard, or step forward and see. If you're ready to reject the joke and reclaim your mind, comment this twice. I see the smile beneath the mask. Say it, to lock it in, to mark the moment you stopped being an audience and started being awake. The laughing man isn't gone.